try to get their own media. That's very interesting for them because then they can control also what is the way you reach out to the citizen, the messages you convey to citizens, which is very dangerous as well. A little bit about the future. In the future, of course, and that's already ongoing, one country a bit more advanced than another country, you see there's a shift towards social media. Social media, I can only advise you, please, regardless whether you use them or don't use them, but I hope all of you, because you're young, you should use them, follow them. Look and see what's happening in social media. What I see is that it's sometimes much more effective to grasp what's going on in politics by following social media and things that people release, maybe in an emotional uprise or whatever it is. That gives a good impression, a good indication of what's really going on in politics. I have been recently negotiating in Macedonia, and I can tell you I followed all the tweets and Facebook pages of influential politicians because it gives an interesting, a very good insight on what's really going on. Things they will never tell you, but you can get it there, because there they get emotional. They will tell the world things that they don't want to tell or shouldn't tell normally, but they do it there. So that's very important for me. So social media, it's a very good resource for information. Yeah? So please, if you go and deal with politics, follow that, see what's going on there. That's one thing. The problem is, of course, with social media, it's a bit uncontrollable. Politicians, at least political parties, and the people in charge for political parties, the ministers, the government, they don't like social media, because social media you cannot control. Meaning that you cannot streamline the communication anymore. You cannot convey the messages that you as a party want to convey to the citizens. It's going to lead its own life a little bit, so, and that's very problematic, I would say, for the traditional type of politicians. There is also the issue of the competition for the other media. I think many of you hope probably still to get a job about the regular media, because these are the media that pay more or less a decent salary, hopefully. Even though when you start it's not so easy. Working for this social media type of publications, which you also have, the Huffington Post is one of the most famous ones. It's not easy to get in. It's very difficult to get employment there. But nevertheless, again, keep an eye on this, because that's the future. I think we will increasingly see transition from the traditional media towards these new media. To a basic extent, all the media, the traditional media will continue to exist. That's an open question. But also from a political point of view, I see increasingly that also politicians shift from the traditional media towards looking into the alternatives, at least younger politicians. Political parties don't follow this trend yet, but it will happen in a few years from now. And I don't know, that's maybe stuff for another type of discussion, how you should, in a rich media landscape, try to deal with that in the future. So competition for the media, the social media, it can be good, of course, for individual politicians, but it's usually perceived as dangerous for the political parties, the use of social media, because you cannot control, you cannot contain what politicians are saying to the citizen and conveying to the citizen. Now, a little bit about why is critical reporting important? I would like to go back to the basics. Let's assume that you are convinced that journalists should do some critical reporting. The baseline is, of course, that media might be what we call the eyes and ears of the citizens. Usually, I told you, the citizens, they elect people to go to parliament, to sit in this parliament, to work in this parliament, to do whatever they have to do, or like to do, or don't like to do. But they're sitting in the parliament. The citizens, they cannot show up there every day. Right? I know there's visitors' corners in all your parliaments, or most of your parliaments, so people can visit parliament. That you cannot hang around there every day to figure out what's going on in my parliament today. But people have the right to know what is going on in parliament. And I know that when you look at the websites of the different parliaments, the information is quite often very, if it is available, the information, it's very high-tech information. You have a series of draft laws with all the technicalities included there, but this is completely ununderstandable for an average citizen. You don't get it. So the role of the media is twofold. First of all, I believe it's good that you can follow up on what is going on in Parliament, and you make the link with the citizens. You tell the citizens, today there was a draft law in second reading being approved on this and this issue. That's one thing. So you give them this basic information. The second issue, even more important, is that you need also to explain this to the citizens in an understandable way. And that's when you interview politicians. The moment they are a little bit knowledgeable, they are really good and know how the system works, there is a trend that they will start using technical language. Talk, for example, about the budget. They can give you all kinds of complicated explanations about the budget. Your role as a journalist is, please translate this technical information into something simple that a normal, average citizen can understand what is going on. What did this politician say when he said that the budget review was not yet completed or not yet completed in the right way because there were still some debt issues lacking? I'll give you one example. If your state would like to conclude a loan getting money from another country, from China for example, they can try to get the money, but they will have to pay this back with a lot of interest on that. So what you see then often is that politicians, they will have a whole technical explanation about this issue of the possible loan and the interest and so on. But it's important that you create an image to the citizens, that citizens can understand what is this about, and compare this to a normal household where you have money and suddenly you don't have sufficient money anymore to go through till the end of the month. Okay, yeah. You have a problem, how are you going to deal with that? You can go to the bank and borrow some money, and as a result your debt will increase. And that's the way you can explain easily to citizens, to the average citizen, what is going on also at state level. The debt increase because you are spending too much money, you need to borrow money from the Chinese or wherever it comes from, but then you need to pay back at some point. Borrowing money is easy, but paying back, that's a bit more difficult, because then you have the issue of the interest and so on. So plain language, simple language, explain to the citizens over and over again. I showed you also in the beginning of this video to give you an impression about Parliament, very simply stating, people pointing out we are living here, we are living there, and then this girl saying, I'm living here, that's my Parliament, that's our Parliament, that's people's Parliament. That's one of the baseline messages that should return over and over again, to tell to the people that Parliament is not something far away, somewhere in the town or in Sarajevo. Parliament is something that concerns everyone, so that's the baseline message. Critical reporting is also important because in the end, members of Parliament are accountable to the citizens. They are responsible for what they are doing, and they should explain on a daily basis or on a regular basis to the citizens what they are doing and why they are doing it. And people should be able to discuss this with them, to tell them we don't agree with you, don't do this or don't do that. The problem is, imagine now a country without media. So the MPs, members of Parliament, are sitting in the Parliament, they are doing whatever they do, or they don't show up even sometimes. Media are not reporting about it. So the citizens cannot control what the people they elected are doing in the Parliament, because the media in the end, they are the only way to figure out, normally, besides maybe the parliamentary website, to figure out what's going on in Parliament. That's one thing. Informational side. Just getting information on what's going on in Parliament, media already. But the second stage Media are even more important when it comes to critical reporting, having critical insight on what MPs are doing. If you see that half of the MPs are rarely showing up for any session in Parliament, yeah, it might be good to question that in a critical way and to interview some of these MPs and tell them, but why are you not in Parliament when you have to be there? It's your job, you are paid for that, you are elected for that. If you don't do that, that's an obligation to the citizens. You will have to report on that because the citizens have to know that you are not doing what you're expected to know to do in Parliament. So that's also one of the other sides of the discussion. So the way you as media, your role is also to make MPs accountable to citizens, to support this in a critical way. Be critical towards your members of Parliament and see what they are doing, question them again and again. That's the only way to make them accountable and to improve also in the end the quality of the system. That's very important. Citizens, of course, also have the right to know. I told you, an average citizen, if I would go to the street here and ask them what's going to happen today in your state parliament, maybe they will say nothing because they know already for many months this year nothing is going on in the state parliament. But maybe some of them might have some interesting information, but I think most of them, 99.9%, will not have a clue about what is going on in Parliament. That's very sad. That means that there is a gap somewhere in the way the news from Parliament is going to the citizens. And then there is another problem. There's of course a problem between the different types of traditional media. The first, most important medium for every citizen in relation to politics is television. Still today. Radio during the day. Newspapers. There are not that many people who are, unfortunately, there are not that many people who are reading newspapers on a daily basis. Maybe you all read newspapers because you have to. I hope so, but I'm not sure. I'm not going to ask you now. We can discuss this later. But it might be good to see this as well. Even in my country, the number of people reading newspapers, let alone on a daily basis, and newspapers and weeklies as well, are very important. Because that's the place where you not only get the information straight on, like you get it on television, but you get also a lot of good background information.